Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us here on Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Andy Serling, and taking a look at today and going through this weekend. We've got a lot of events going on. We have obviously the 45th Eclipse Awards ceremony on Saturday night, and that's actually followed by a big day of Sunshine Millions. They drew yesterday. We got to handicapping last night, and a very tough card on Saturday.
It is. It's a fun card. There's 6 Sunshine Million races, 12 races on the card, a nice mix of races there, and some opportunities, I think. And these races do present opportunities. I find I've always loved the Sunshine Millions. I loved it when it was the California thing, and it was a bunch of races out there and a bunch of races here, and it's always been a fun concept. It's the Florida Breds now, but they are interesting races.
Absolutely. And talking about our featured wagers and carryovers yesterday, well, they did take down the Rainbow Pick 6 in that final race. We were talking about this before we came on air, too. Very weird last race. A horse that I didn't think figured went off as a 5-2 and wired the field, so very interesting. And that was a single in the pick 6. They hit it for over 77,000. But looking at the featured wagers today, race 1 does kick off the rolling super high 5. As we get into race 1 as well, it does kick off the 50-cent pick 5. And race 5 starts a 20-cent Rainbow pick 6 today on the 10 race program. Race 6 starts the 50-cent late pick 5 as well.
Yeah, and I picked 5 tickets, and we might as well just start out and get that pick 5 ticket out of the way to start. I'm playing kind of small in the first one. It didn't seem very easy to start it out. I'm going to try to single in the second race. Didn't work out very well for me yesterday, but didn't prevent me from hitting it anyway, so we'll go light here, 3 by 1, by 3, by 2, by 3 as we go through these races. And I don't know about you, Gabby, I thought that the first race today set the tone. It was not an easy race.
Not an easy race, indeed, and you can approach this race with several different angles. We'll actually take a look at a replay here that obviously Riviere de Lou is actually a scratch in here, but we have 2 other horses who actually do come out of that same race, including Jose Seaview and the 9 Gunderson in here. And as you can see, the 3 Riviere de Lou not running today, but the 9 Jose Seaview. And the one thing that I actually looked for in this race too, Andy, was the number 4 Gunderson in here, and that's why I go back and stick with him here today. Primarily because I thought he chased pretty strong opening quarter and half fractions, and he actually stuck in there, he dug in there as the other speed faltered late. I know a lot of people will probably go to Jose Seaview and think that he had a wide trip and obviously some trouble in there, which is perhaps a reason.
I thought he had a great trip in there, and for all the reasons you're talking about. I mean, listen, I don't like either one of these horses, but if I wanted somebody, I would agree with you on Gunderson. As you say, he did much more of the dirty work. Now, it's not as though it was a race that completely and totally fell apart, which was my initial inclination with there. But Jose Seaview, yeah, he broke a little slowly in there, but didn't he just pretty much save ground the first turn, then angle wide in the second turn, and he was second best in a race that set up well for him?
No, that's why I land on Gunderson. As I mentioned there, he was coming off a May layoff. I thought it did the majority of the dirty work as well, so I give the slight preference to him. But you don't like that race whatsoever. You go to the 8 in here for Belmont.
Yeah, I feel as though you look at that race and those horses are moving up, and you've got horses that are moving down from the races that they were in. And the race that horses like Star Contender and Tetradrachma come out of was a much, much stronger race. Now, I will agree that Tetradrachma didn't really do any running in there, and that is a bit troublesome. But he was claimed for $32,000, and he was claimed out of a race at Aqueduct where there was absolutely no pace whatsoever, and they just ceded the race to compliance officer who likes that kind of course, has done well at Aqueduct, and Tetradrachma ran okay. He's going to get some pace to run into in this race. This race sets up as an honestly run race, and I think that should help him in there. And I also thought, you know what, he'll be a square price. Star Contender's okay as well, but this looked like a race to me that would have a fairly honest pace.
I think it's going to have a very honest pace, and Star Contenders that kind of fits the bill of perhaps sitting right there in the catbird seat. That's why I kind of preferred him over your top selection, Luis Saez. You could just kind of paint a picture and see this horse stalking from behind the speed.
Yeah, I'm also going to wonder what With Exultation will do for the new connections. Obviously, he was a bomb against Better last time out. He's run a lot of good races. The question is, can these connections keep him going? If they can, he can win here.
Interesting first race to kick off the 10-race program indeed. We'll move on to the second race, a 6,250 non-winners, a 3 lifetime condition, and going out to the main track at 6 furlongs. And an interesting race indeed. I kind of pictured that you and I wouldn't agree here, and quite frankly, my picks are all over the place in this race. I thought this was one of the more interesting races on the card too. The 9 Renombre. You go back to, he was placed through 6th through disqualification last time out.
Yeah, sometimes there are races where you just take a stand, and in a lot of ways it makes it easier for you. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to cash, but this is not an easy race, you said. And just by the very fact that we've got 5 different horses in our 6 selections up there means that at least there's different ways to go, whether you agree or not, or our picks turn out to be good at all. But with Renombre, I bet him last time. I thought he could win off the claim for Mike Petro and Frank Calabrese. He didn't run well, but he was also going a mile in there. Now they turn him back off the claim. This is a much easier field, I think, than the one he met last time out. And my hope is, if I thought I could take a shot with him last time, I think I'm supposed to give him one more chance in here, and that's enough.
And these are the types of horses that you want to try to give one more chance as well, because a lot of the times they go in and out of form. There's a very high lack of consistency here, so you might as well stick with them a couple of times. I land on the 3 Never in Trouble. Was a decent third last time out behind Right On Ready, who's won the past 4 races in a row, including against Open Company next out as well. So I thought that race was relatively strong for the level. And again, now going against non-winners of 3, I think it's a little bit of a class relief.
All right, listen, I didn't really like him, but the horse who was second in that race did come back to win.
And the 2 El Kraken is another one, and a 10-pound apprentice. I believe after doing some researching, this might be his first ride in North America. Has a couple of rides down in Puerto Rico, so interested to see how this pans out as well. But Ramon Moya as well has decent statistics with route to sprint with these claimers as well, about 35% out of a pretty hefty sample size.
Yeah, this horse is very, very problematic, because I would have picked this horse if this horse had a rider that I was familiar with. I just couldn't take a 10-pound bug rider, but I agree that El Kraken on his PPs is dangerous.
Okay, moving on to race 3, a maiden $16,000 event, a mile and a 16th on the turf course, and we have a little bit of a
disagreement.
Replay.
We have a replay and a disagreement, as a matter of fact, in the air.
Good.
Because we're going to talk about the 12 Bell Piana, who I had bet last time out, and also the 6 horse in here, Just Like Khaki. Now, they're the 6, and I think the 11 in the race we're going to watch. I got to tell you, I don't know how you can bet Bell Piana in here and not bet on the 6, Just Like Khaki. To me, Bell Piana had a much, much easier trip overall.
Well, you see this Bell Piana going into the first turn, and look how wide she is.
Because the 6 is forcing them out.
Yes,
but
and
she
getting
angles
into
in.
trouble. Then she angles in, but she did it took her out of contention early whatsoever. And again,
see where the 6 is? She's not being circled. I wish she was being circled. She's the one in orange back there. What was Bell Piana's excuse not to win this race?
Well, the 2 was coming out a little bit. She was on the wrong lead here. She didn't finish very strongly, but
she's a chandelier.
Paco did have to stand up in the saddle there.
Because she's hanging so badly, he couldn't believe it. Because he's thinking he should put her up on the dining room ceiling.
Honestly, I thought it was a picture-perfect ride and performance for the winner, for Holy Scat.
It was, I agree.
She stalked from the outside. She got into a perfect position, whereas Bell Piana was very wide going into the first turn. Holy Scat, Corey Lannery rode an aggressive ride to kind of drift her out during the stretch. And if you get a horse who doesn't finish well, she was also on the wrong lead too.
But that's, that's her problem, and that's something I'm not confident about. And I thought in watching it the first time, and I think I even texted you and said there might be an inquiry, because I told you I bet Bell Piana. And when I watched the head-on, there shouldn't have been an inquiry there. I think Bell Piana was the one who was doing it. It kind of looked a little bit of an illusion. Listen, I don't love Just Like Khaki either, but I thought Just Like Khaki, just of the 2 of them, had the tougher trip. She was wider. She was bounced around. I know that Bell Piana got carried out a little in the first turn, but he quickly sort of got her back inside and saved some ground. I don't know. I just also thought that the 6, Just Like Khaki, be a better price. And ultimately, I can't bet Bell Piana back, because I bet her last time. She should have won the race, in my opinion. Now she's got the 12 post again.
You're bitter and angry.
I am a bitter and angry man. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're just beginning to learn that.
Well, and Bell Piana too. And now the mile versus the mile and a 16th. I know she still draws the outside post position, but at least she has a longer run to save a little bit of ground and get into contention earlier. We could talk about Bell Piana all day.
She can win. I'm not, listen, I picked her 4th. I'm not like super against her. I just feel like the 6 will be a bigger price, and she's more likely to win today.
What about your 10? Weight of gold here, Freddie.
I don't know what to do with this horse, because this horse had been entered an easier spot and scratched a couple of weeks ago. This horse has plenty of pedigree. It's a first foal from a family that, I'm sorry, it's a family. There's 3. I'm looking at the wrong one. There's 3 turf winners in this family. And I don't like the horse being claimed for $32,000 and running for $16,000. That was Canadian dollars, so it's a little bit less, but it's not a great sign. But she's still got the pedigree, and I still think she'll be a fair enough price. I picked her.
I'm going to throw in the 5 Sour Lemon Drop into the exacta. She only tried the turf twice in the past, and one of them was at Parks, and that was a horrendous performance, quite frankly. They were going into the first turn, and a horse to their inside completely floated her wide and was bumped in between horses. You have to throw out that first performance at Parks, and her second performance was actually quite decent against maiden $40,000 company at the Meadowlands, and that was coming off an August layoff. So this is a horse who I think figures a little bit.
She hit the board with NOL Beato, which is something a lot of horses cannot say. Forever a Fleet, I think, is the horse to beat in this race. The 8, I just don't want 0 for 11s with 1 second, but this horse is taking a significant drop.
All right, we'll move on to the 4th race, a 12,500 conditional claimer, mile on the main track. And I believe we have a little bit of a statistic. We'll start it off with the 6 Lucky Bella for the barn. Decent statistics here for the barn, actually, with 50% drop in claiming price on the dirt over the past couple of years.
You know what I like about the stack, Abby, is the 17 in the money. It's a great win percentage and a good ROI, and not a particularly special in the money. So it feels like there's sort of all or none moves. They either win, or most of the time they don't run very well. You don't see stats like that often. Usually there's a fairly even dispersal of the in the monies, and that's good enough. I feel like the 6 and 2, just like you, they're going to be the 2 horses towards the front end, and I'll live and die with the 2 of them in the pick 5.
I agree with you. I actually kind of like this filly. She has been sprinting the past couple of starts against tougher on the main track, but now she gets back to a distance. She's won going 2 turns at Monmouth. I don't think it should be a problem. Really not more to say other than those 2. I think they're the 2 to beat.
It's just hard to make strong cases for anyone else.
All right, with that said, that's races 1 through 4. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the pick 6 does start in today's 5th race. It was hit yesterday, but still a very interesting sequence right after this. Welcome back to Gulfstream today, and now taking a look at the pick 6 sequence. It is a 20-cent pick 6. It was hit yesterday for just shy of $77,000, but a very tough pick 6 and pick 5 ticket, I thought, in the late pick 5 as well. There's one race in particular. We'll throw up the ticket. It's actually relatively inexpensive, all considering, $57.60. I'm using 6 horses in race 8. I thought 6 horses could win the race. I'm keying around 1 horse in race 7, who I'm not purely confident on. She's actually 8 to 1 on the morning line.
She won't be 8 to 1.
But
he won't be.
But I think this horse could definitely win. So that's kind of my strongest opinion in the sequence. So keying off of that horse, primarily because I need to use a lot in race 8.
No, and you and I talked about that, and we'll get to that race and talk about it. And I'm on the exact same page as you. You have my top choice in your picks, and I'm glad you do, for better or for worse. The 5 Living for Love. I don't love taking horses that haven't run in 10 months. You don't know what the story is. But I think it's very important that we show the stretch run of Living for Love's 1 race at Fairgrounds, because sometimes you see lacked room 8th pole and it's not really important. This is a horse that absolutely had run and was completely and totally blocked for a significant portion of the stretch and had no chance, and in my opinion would have won with a clean trip.
I agree with you. I went back and watched this replay several times and had no opportunity to really get a clear run. And you see James Graham as well, a fantastic turf rider, and he just could not find any room to run. Now, my biggest concern with this, Andy, is that obviously this filly showed enough talent with excuses in her debut at the Fairgrounds against Maiden Specialweight Company. Now under Michael Matz's barn, off of time since March, why immediately hang the price tag of $35,000?
Because this horse has major issues, and that's why I was off for a year. And I agree. I mean, listen, I have no confidence, but I had to pick this horse. The other thing is, I didn't really love anybody else in here. So it made it easier for me to pick this horse. I have no problem betting this horse if the horse is 5-1 or something. I'm not going to bet it at 3-1 because of the layoff. I don't know. They're all negatives, no question about it. But if this horse is able to run anymore, it's going to be very tough to beat in here.
Not to mention, that was a pretty strong race. We saw the top two finishers come out, and they've actually been very solid against Allowance Company. So I like that filly. I'm using her in the mix, but I landed on the 12 variety of colors. I agree with you in terms that the 8 Zips Legacy and the 11 Gabby's Kitten, these could be vulnerable horses in here coming out of the same race. The 12 variety of colors, I'm coming with a new shooter here who she gets a little bit of added distance, but we have seen Blame Dixie, Little Snip, that race back at Gulfstream Park West, be relatively strong for the level. And she does draw the outside post today, but again, going back and watching that replay too, it was a very strong gallop out, so I'm wondering how she's going to fare now coming off a freshening, stretching out to 2 turns.
Yeah, one of her worst races, though, was the 1/16 race around 2 turns at Delaware. And you are, listen, for better or for worse, you are more forgiving of these stretch outs from 5 and 5.5 to 7.5 than me. I consider it a stretch to a route, and I hate those stretches. They just don't win enough. And she's saddled with a lousy outside post. But if the 5 can't run anymore, a lot of horses can win this race.
I agree with you. That's why I had to use several different horses. Let's talk about Zips Legacy and Gabby's Kitten for a second, because they both come out of the same race. You prefer Zips Legacy here now on the cut back to 7.5.
Well, I prefer Zips Legacy, even though she's part of a pace that may get kind of hot, because she's only got 4 career starts and 2 starts in the turf, and she actually ran better going longer than she did sprinting, whereas Gabby's Kitten, who ran fine last time, is over 14 with 4 seconds and 4 thirds. She's a horse that just finds horses to beat her, and the going's going to get tougher at Gulfstream, not easier.
And that's why I actually left her out of the pick 6, because she just looks like a filly that doesn't have a lot of follow-through. I left the 8 Zips Legacy out of the pick 6 as well, because I thought she milked those fractions last time out. I think there's a little bit more early pace that she might have to contend with today. One kind of long shot that I threw in was a 7 Storm in Charlotte. It wasn't a bad race that she put in last time out, sprinting at 5 furlongs. She is taking a slight step up, but she has experience going the 2 turn 7.5 against Maiden Special Weight Company.
Yeah, but she's part of the pace with the 1 and 8 at the very least.
All right, well, it's a very tricky race to kick off the pick 6 indeed. I'm using 4 horses in that leg. We'll move on to the 6th race, the 6,259 winners at 2 lifetime conditions, scratch to 2 in excessiveness, and you came up with a 50-cent pick 5 strategy, so talk us through your ticket.
Putting a lot more money into this one, and I'm going to play this one. If I'm putting this kind of money up on the screen, I'm going to bet my own money on it if I'm asking you to do it. And it's not going to be easy, but I'm using 3 horses and 5 of the legs, 2 horses in the 9th. I considered singling the 7. If I wanted to cut it down, I would single the 7 in race number 9 with a scratch of the 8 horse. I like the 7 and 8 as 2 possibilities. We'll go through it. And this race, if the 1, 4, and 9 don't win, I have to be eliminated, Gabby.
I agree with you. I wanted to use the 4 Crazy Frank C, but I just limited myself to the 1 and 9 in here. We'll talk about the 1 midterm exam. This horse has taken a big class relief, and even he's had some excuses in the last start. Last start, he was bumped out of the gate. He was so wide, and that kind of move, it doesn't give a horse a lot of confidence in order to win.
Yeah, it's just he's a cheaper horse, and he's finally running for the cheaper level. I just, for me, he's just making a huge drop, and that's good enough for me.
The 9 Super Zapper 2, first off the claim for Patricia Farrer. We have a little bit of a statistic for the barn as well. Over the course of the past 5 years, first off the claim on the dirt with lower level claimers, 21 out of 84, so 25%, 54% in the money. And this is over 5 years, and I thought that was a pretty strong stat.
You sent this one in, right?
Yeah.
I actually looked this one up, but I didn't look at the in the money numbers, so I'm amazed. I agree. It's very strong, and it shows that she does well in these situations on a logical horse. I didn't think this race was won. If somebody else wins, I don't see it. I'm not clever enough to see it.
Me too, apparently. We both agree. We'll move on to the 7th race. A restricted maiden special weight going out to the turf course at the mile, scratch the 9 patio wagon in here. And you and I both agree on the 1 Mystic Sky. I like this horse for several different reasons, and not really because you can see in the short comment, was checked at the quarter pole, yes, was making a move and then checked, but primarily because I think this is a tremendous class relief. He was racing against Giant Run and Spectre Lindley, 2 horses who I think very highly of, and I think this is a big class relief.
I think it's twofold. I think it's both the things you mentioned. It's huge class relief, a horse that draws a very good post on the inside, and I thought that trouble may have been significant. It's very hard to tell when you're watching it, but the horse completely goes out the door in the trouble. And I really think something bad happened there. I like this horse, and as you say, I considered singling this horse as well. I have to use market strength, though. Chad Brown's first-time star. I don't know anything about this horse, but they paid over 300,000 after working 10 flat. It's a fast workout. This horse does not have a significant amount of pedigree, even though it's half to 1 turf winner. So I have to use that horse.
I did kind of look on the bottom side too. I couldn't. It's a high price purchase, and you always have to be very fearful of Chad Brown, especially on the turf and these types of races. But you know, I had opinion. I stuck with the 1 in here. The 14 Leonardo da Vinci is an interesting one for Michael Tomlinson. Is coming last time out, got Lasix for the first time under previous handlings, and it's coming out of a relatively strong race, as we saw Life Imitates Art go on to win the Dania Beach.
No, I have no problem with this horse other than the post. I can't use the horse from post 14, but he makes sense. And you've got Smorgasbord. You're showing a partial stat on that stat that I showed with the one loser he had at this meet, where Mike Maker's been very, very good with his first-time stars at Gulfstream Park with a limited sample. This one, though, Smorgasbord, this is not exactly a compelling pedigree.
I know, it's very interesting, but over the past 2 years, first-time starters at turf routes made in special weight at Gulfstream, so very specific. 3 for 5, 60%, and 4 for 5 in the money and a positive ROI. Those are very strong, potent stats.
Yeah, and the other thing that's sort of interesting about Smorgasbord is this horse is working at fairgrounds, and at fairgrounds they either they're not running that many maiden races on the turf, or they're taking them off the turf. And obviously, as a Florida bred, there's the opportunities as well, and many more opportunities for maidens than turf here, and that's why they shipped him here. And maybe you have to think of that as a good sign.
All right, we'll move on to the 8th race, a starter optional claimer, 1 mile on the main track. And this is the head scratcher of the day, in my opinion. I had a really tough time with this race. I used 6 horses in the pick 6. I think 6 horses could win this race.
No, you and I talked about it once again before the show, and you said I had a lot of trouble. And I said, yeah, I wrote down the 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. And you said, yeah, those are the 6 I used in my pick 6. And this was one where, you know, you have these races, and I find in a lot of races here, and, you know, you do the best you can, but you're juggling balls. And sometimes maybe if you pick the race a half an hour later, you'd pick somebody else on top. But I'll write down the horses I feel like I could pick. And then you think, okay, who are the 2 I don't want to use? And then you say, I got 4 left. Who are the bigger prices? And you try to go from there. But, I mean, these are our picks, but we end up in the same horse, maybe for the same reason, but a lot of horses can win.
And I think it's definitely important to kind of pose the question, the pace. What is the pace going to look like? Because we have several horses who have a lot of speed, and not all of them can go to the lead.
It's projected by time form the 2 and 3 are far ahead of the other 2 horses in here, and I can see that. Percussion's going to go. I don't like him in here, Percussion. I don't think he's near good enough to win this race in his current conditioning. I do think the Market Blaster's good enough to win, and he probably didn't like the slop last time. He got involved in a pace that fell apart and was eased, but he's got other races that could be very, very good here. He's got a little Jekyll and Hyde in him.
We looking to the outside Saturday special. I don't like the fact that this horse draws the outside post. That's going to be very detrimental because,
really?
Well, and I didn't think it was a big issue before, but then actually looking at stats with post 11 going a mile or farther on the main track, only 1 horse so far at the meet has won from that post position. So
well, one of the reasons is we've had strong inside biases on a number
true.
of days, and we didn't have that as the situation yesterday. So if we're looking at yesterday's racetrack, I'm not really worried about it, but I think that a lot of it may have to do with the racetrack.
And I actually threw in an interesting one in the mix here, the 7 Ravello's Boy. I think this horse has stalking speed. Obviously, he's coming out of some decent races, a starter allowance last time out at Penn. Again, this is a horse that could win.
Yeah, I'm dubious about taking horses from Penn National and having them transfer that form, but he does have a decent race at Monmouth as well. And with Saturday Special, it's a bit of a Jorge Navarro play, and I thought if this horse could get back to those good races, he's second off a layoff. He's in a very tough spot coming off a layoff, the claiming ground. This is a more realistic spot, and I'm hoping he gets the right trip, but man, this ain't easy.
It ain't easy. We'll move on to the 9th race, the first half of the late daily double. First level allowance going 1 turn mile on the main track. The 720 in 1 is an interesting play. First off the claim for Michael Tomlinson. Now, they dropped the previous connections. Rusty Arnold dropped this horse in class for the $30,000 tag, immediately went in and claimed. And now, looking back at the replay, too, we'll take a look at this last replay at Churchill Downs because it was a battle to the finish.
No, it was. I mean, this horse was definitely involved. This is a horse that's got, she's got a long storied history, I think, of some trips and races, actually. ultimately, am I right that Michael Tomlinson had the horse that finished second to Amy's Flatter yesterday, and that horse was off the claim? Moutage, was that? Wasn't that Michael Tomlinson? That horse ran like a
Huge.
wildebeest yesterday. They must have been shocked that he ran the race he did and lost, because that was a 104 buyer, graded stakes quality performance. And if he could get those kind of performances off the claim, and he could move 20-1 up from Rusty at all, I didn't love the last race, but I still think it's the race that makes the horse to beat in here. And she's supposed to get a good trip, supposed to get a good setup.
Yeah, and that's what you have to like about her, is she has the tactical speed in here. The barn, I was so impressed by the performance that Montige put in yesterday too. It was so game and defeat. So if this horse can improve like that horse did off the claim yesterday, she should be very, very tough to beat. But who do you try to beat her with? Who do you use to back yourself up? You opt for the one, Queen's Princess.
You know, I thought the 8 was the logical other horse. I didn't really want the speeds, horses like the 2, the 3, the 9. As you said with the 7, she's not slow, so even if the pace doesn't materialize as fast, she can be closer in here. I didn't really love those horses, and Queen's Princess, I think Corey Lannery, in my opinion, is riding as well as any rider here. And I was talking to Richie Migliori, who was here yesterday, and he was asking me who was riding well. And I said, listen, a lot of guys are, and obviously Javier's been doing very well, but the one guy that's really day in and day out impressed, I think, both of us, was Corey. And this is a horse that can take advantage of any pace that it might get, and seems to be improving a little bit for Dale.
I agree with you on all those mentions there as well. The 5, Sing Lady Sing, is a horse I'll use. I don't think she's fast enough to contend against allowance horses at 6 furlongs. I thought she put in a relatively good race behind Mom's Laughing last time out. You go to her back races going a route of ground, and she was competing against way over her head, Embellish the Lace, Chocolate. I just think she's getting a slight class relief from her previous route races on the main track.
Well, and at least she's not supposed to be right involved in the pace with Saez, so I guess that seems to be possible. We'll see how it works out. The 7's supposed to be tough, but around here, supposed to be tough doesn't work out all the time.
Who knows? We'll move on to the 10th and final race, a maiden $25,000 event, a mile and a 16th on the turf course. Have a couple of scratches in here, and this is an interesting race because I thought that some of the more tougher horses to beat drew an outside post. I thought one horse that figured, your top selection, Crafty Colonel, draws a great post and gets Xavier.
Yeah, that's kind of why I went. I think the 13, the horse you have on top, is the horse to beat. And I had originally thought about putting this horse on top. The problem with Malibu's Most Wanted is you're not going to get much price. You're dealing with now post 12 because you have a scratch in the 6 Sky Die, but it's still post 12. And also, with blinkers on and with potential speed from the 9 Table Talk, who's not slow, Mark Hennick's horse, and obviously can win this race as well, I don't think there's an extreme likelihood of the pace being particularly slow. So that's not going to make it easy for Malibu's Most Wanted.
I just like the fact that he's stretching out farther 2 turns. I know I went 2 turns last time out, but if you see him in the paddock, he's a big, big horse, and he just looks like, even though he has some speed, it looks like he might be able to carry that speed a little bit better going a route of ground or farther distances. So they put the blinkers on. I agree with you. He could be contentious, but if you draw an outside post, going 2 turns, this is the type of horse you want. You want a fast horse that can break sharply and get into position early.
That's a good point. You want a horse, and he's got to go. And you've got the right rider in Paco Lopez who's going to go. But Table Talk, I don't think Joe Bravo is going to come out of there thinking, okay, I'm just going to let him go and let him win this race. He's smart enough. He's going to be in position. I think that horse can win. Both of these horses obviously have tired in their races, but they're meeting much lesser here, and this is an easier spot. And the same could be said for Crafty Colonel, who also met tougher races, didn't do as much running, significant drop, though, and gets the rail and might just trip out.
One interesting horse I thought was the 11 Unspoken Quality. They tried to get this horse on the turf several starts, exclusive quality out of an El Prado mare. And the interesting thing about this horse, too, against Maiden 25 Company, was that he was very well bet at Gulfstream Park West, his lone turf try, and it was a decent third in that race. A couple of horses came out to win. But if you get a decent price on this horse, I know he's a long-time maiden, but he very well could run into the mix.
Well, he's a long-time. I don't like him, but that's fine. A lot of horses win that I don't like. He's not, in my mind, he's not a long-time maiden in the sense that he's 0 for 1 on the turf, and he finished 3rd. It was far and away the best race he ever ran. So I don't worry about that because it's a surface situation.
Okay, well, let's see if we can make magic happen. Race 8, very tough in the sequence today, and overall a very tough pick 6 and late pick 5.
I feel as though we've already made magic happen. See, I didn't have to disagree there. I think this has been a magical show.
It has.
Now the horses just have to cooperate. It's not us. It's up to them.
We have our opinions, we have our strong opinions, and sometimes they don't always pan out, but we always hope we do. That's why we keep showing up, right?
One of the many reasons.
All right, well, thank you for joining us once again on Gulfstream today. We're going to take a quick break, and Larry Comas will be back shortly with scratches and changes, and we'll be back for races 1 through 10. And thank you for joining us once again. We'll see you for race 1. Best of luck.